Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents 12 Days of Terror Inside the Shocking 1916 New Jersey Shark Attacks by Richard G. Fernicola, M.D. Narrated by Jonathan Yen. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. Genesis, chapter 1, verse 26. Preface. Summer 2016 marks the 100th anniversary of the epical New Jersey shark attacks. Undoubtedly, this milestone will generate new reflection on a century-old cold case. The 1916 events were stunning in their ferocity, timeline, and location. The stories surrounding them are filled with tragedy and heroism, and the scientific, geopolitical, and cultural contexts of the day are fascinating. Regardless of the bizarre and confounding nature of these attacks, it is man's general impression of the shark that drives most interest. The shark, with its prominent teeth, large size, sandpaper-like armor, vitality, relative insensibility, and stealthy approach, causes fear. On rare occasions, a shark will dismember its victim alive. As a chief attack investigator said in 1916, "There is something peculiarly sinister in the shark's makeup, suggesting an evil spirit." Unlike large terrestrial predators, it rarely administers a coup de grace to the neck during an assault. In a world where man is the most precious resident and its most powerful predator, a shark attack is perceived as a violation of the natural order. A lifelong scar, impairment, or death, however, is not the only fallout from serious attacks. Today, with near instantaneous global news feeds, shark attacks continue to occupy people's minds like no other animal-related phenomenon. In the past 15 years alone, several high-profile shark incidents have garnered major scientific and media attention. On the southeastern coast of the United States, North Carolina was subject to several serious attacks in early summer of 2015. Explanations for the uncharacteristic Carolina attacks were varied. Some experts speculated that sharks were mistaking people for sea turtles, while others noted the prevalence of shredding prey crabs present during the full moon. The tiger shark and the bull shark were implicated in the North Carolina accidents. The 2001 Summer of the Shark was notable for a grisly attack on Florida's Gulf Coast, 2 simultaneous attacks in North Carolina, 1 Bahamian attack, and 1 in Virginia Beach. 2 swimmers lost their lives in those incursions, and 2 others were seriously injured. Worldwide cyber connections even provide us with information on shark attacks from distant locations. Since 2011, on the other side of the world, the surf zone waters off Reunion Island in the Indian Ocean have been under siege by tiger sharks and an invasive collection of bull sharks. Of all recorded shark aggression of the last decade, the Red Sea attack spree in the resort community of Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, conjures the most intrigue. With truly anomalous attack behavior reminiscent of the 1916 New Jersey sequence, Sharm el-Sheikh experienced 5 unprovoked attacks over a 6-day period, leading to 1 death. A U.S. team of investigators was deployed to Egypt to assess the attacks, concluding that the oceanic white-tip shark and a short-fin mako were the likely suspects. The experts also determined that recent ocean dumping of sheep carcasses off resort areas and tourist-associated hand-feeding of sharks were the likely triggers. They could be right. Lab experiments in the 1950s determined that sharks remember and maintain learned behaviors. The Sharm el-Sheikh shark team also observed that the short-fin mako had previous dental injuries and was malnourished. The ocean white-tip shark had a distortion injury to its tail fin. These findings may well have application to understanding the unnatural predation behavior in 1916. Although a shark attack is shocking and tragic by nature, it is still an exceedingly uncommon occurrence. Worldwide, there are on average 100 unprovoked attacks a year with 10 fatalities. The vast majority of those attacks are cases of mistaken prey identification, which are followed by a corresponding quick release by the shark. In actuality, deaths from tiger mauling, snake bite, insect bite, and lightning strike are much more common. During the cluster of attacks in North Carolina in 2015, for example, 7 people in the U.S. had already been killed by lightning. Historical perspective also shows that in the decades leading up to the 1916 attacks, 33,247 people had been fatally mauled by tigers in British India. From 1918 to 1919, 50 million people died from the influenza virus. Man-generated mass killings like the 9/11 disaster and the Sharm el-Sheikh air disaster of 2015 add yet another layer of blunt perspective to the actual impact and threat of shark-related injury. Meanwhile, 73 million to 100 million sharks a year are indiscriminately slaughtered for their fins. The fins represent a tasteless ingredient in a luxury soup. Mass exterminations like these, combined with GPS-powered overfishing, pollution, and acidification, have plunged many shark species to an endangered level. These poorly controlled impacts have also influenced an imbalance among differing species. A shark's reproductive capacity simply cannot keep pace with unnatural predation or ecological insults. Apex predators, by nature, have few natural enemies, and after an extended arrival at sexual maturity, they produce a small number of pups with each litter. Technology may have made man the Earth's most successful hunter, but it is also assisting in powerful and practical conservation efforts. Portable satellite tracking tags have added pioneering insights into the migratory patterns of many shark species. In 2015, a 16-foot female great white named Mary Lee captivated the public as it swam between Florida and the Northeast. Its pings were available in real time via internet and even newsprint. This methodology is far advanced from the older tagging studies discussed in this book. Knowing a shark's location at any given time can greatly benefit both shark and man. Satellite technology may even allow sharks to assist man in more immediate and obvious ways. Since sharks often gravitate toward areas of storm intensification, researchers hope to use satellite data to monitor tropical storm and hurricane development. This data retrieval system would utilize a shark as a mobile weather station to discern on-site conditions. The first satellite tag to be applied to an Atlantic white shark occurred in the most unlikely of settings. In the fall of 2004, a 14-foot female great white spent 2 weeks in a brackish lagoon off Noshawn Island, Massachusetts. There, the large shark negotiated depths as shallow as 3 feet. Also in Massachusetts, on July 12, 2015, Chatham beachgoers observed a 7-foot white shark ground itself on a beach while attempting to snare a seagull. That juvenile white shark was later tagged and returned to the sea. Since the 2004 tagging success in Massachusetts, white sharks have made a local resurgence around Cape Cod, where seals have colonized. Great white sharks also found their way into two estuarine lakes in Australia during this same period. In 2005 and 2008, a juvenile white shark and an adult, respectively, were reportedly spotted in Tuggerah Lake in Western Australia. The lake has only an intermittent, shallow opening to the sea. Likewise, in 2014 and 2015, at Lake Macquarie in southeastern Australia, white sharks wandered into that brackish waterway. One juvenile white shark that entered Lake Macquarie was seen actively feeding in the shallows. The Lake Macquarie incidents, like the Noshawn Island episode, were documented by video and photography. Rare estuarine visitations may well be relevant to the analysis of the New Jersey Matawan Creek attacks. We have long known that white sharks enter bays, harbors, sounds, and inlets, and evidence may suggest that they can indeed enter tidal lagoons, canals, rivers, and creeks. A white shark is categorized as a coastal pelagic species. It would only be logical for a white shark to have the capability to accommodate, at least for a short period, to abrupt variations in salinity. Currently, in Western Australia, sophisticated alarm systems, detailed sonar, electromagnetic pulses, and drones are being tested as non-lethal shark detection and deterrent mechanisms. These efforts may help substitute for controversial lethal measures such as gill nets and culling. Over the past century, the 1916 events, the World War II Pacific naval disasters, and the Jaws film phenomenon all influenced generational perceptions of sharks and shark attacks. As for their varying degrees of impact and longevity, each took place at very different times in history. In 1916, the investigating scientists wrote that the truly exceptional nature of the accidents should not be lost sight of. The New Jersey accidents bring the whole shark question before us in a new phase. Certainly, all northeastern bathers would remember the New Jersey calamities for a long while. The 1916 shark scenario also received brief mention in the novel Jaws and the subsequent famous film. Few may have noticed that the Matawan Creek aspect of the New Jersey attacks meandered its way to vague reference in an early 1960s episode of The Andy Griffith Show. On the other hand, wide-scale public awareness of the Jersey man-eater must have waned shortly after the attacks. Serious northeastern attacks of any frequency abruptly stopped after the 1916 tragedy. Additionally, in the years immediately following the 5 attacks, the U.S. dealt with profoundly more devastating events, such as the Spanish flu epidemic and entry into World War I. Similarly, the so-called 2001 Summer of the Shark fury abated with an end to the attacks and a justifiable concentration on the September 11th disaster. Jaws, by contrast, with its sensational, fictional, and non-fictional elements, is perpetually replayed in multimedia. Today, although shark attacks may be of high value in media ratings, relevant television documentary coverage, public aquariums, and educational research programs have highlighted the shark's more majestic qualities. Such exposure also complements recognition of the complex interactions in our ocean's vital ecosystems. Inherent to that understanding is the fact that sharks have roamed the sea for 400 million years. They inhabited the planet before and after dinosaurs, before mammals, before insects, and even before trees. They have survived 5 major extinction events and must have an irreplaceable biobehavioral role in developing, sustaining, and redeveloping a healthy sea. Some researchers believe that further decimation of shark stocks could even alter the planet's carbon footprint. Valid statistics on shark populations will obviously be critical to any future management approaches. When a spike in regional shark accidents occur, observers are quick to identify the particulars of increasing local shark numbers and increasing or decreasing shark prey opportunities. Those factors may have varying applications toward any attack analysis. The one statistical factor, however, which is routinely cited to explain any increase in shark-human encounters is man's relocation to coastlines and increased popularity in beach recreation. Demographics and surf zone recreation statistics cannot fully explain the 100-year-old New Jersey attacks, but one cannot dispute the fact that the early 20th century did correspond to new opportunities for leisure time and mass transit train travel. Thousands upon thousands of people flocked to the ocean in numbers never before imagined. A 1916 biologist stated that, "Here in the waters, for a century considered safe, we are confronted with a situation which, in addition to actual destruction of human life, has terrorized countless numbers of people who enjoy ocean bathing." A global trend toward recreational use of shoreline waters has grown continuously since 1916. Now, paddleboarders, boogie boarders, surfers, snorkelers, kayakers, and swimmers enjoy the sea on a regular basis. The trend of fishing off kayaks, intimately close to the water's surface, may even inspire sharks to associate man with competition for food. As President John F. Kennedy said in 1962, "We are tied to the ocean, and when we go back to the sea, we are going back from whence we came." Likewise, the Bible's 23rd Psalm tells us that restful waters restoreth my soul. Man's increasing seashore activities should not, however, diminish our awareness that coastal waters represent a dynamic, live-action habitat. Unlike a zoo, public aquarium, water park, an artificial wave pool, or even an animal park, swimming and surfing areas are sections of a diverse natural domain. At our seaside doorstep, we have easy access to this uncontrolled wildlife setting. Among the inhabitants of that sphere may be apex predators. Fortunately, perhaps better than any large terrestrial apex predator in their natural environment, sharks have displayed a remarkable ability to avoid contact with human beings. Regardless of a shark's prowess to discriminate man and prey, a well-crafted balance must be struck between intense human use of coastal waters and biodiverse conservation. Upon the centennial of the infamous New Jersey shark attacks and the reissue of 12 Days of Terror, this author hopes the listener will appreciate both the fact-based scientific analysis as well as the cultural description of the age. It is also hoped that this retrospective investigation will add to the advancing data collection on sharks and shark behavior. In the case of the 1916 attacks, or any highly unusual attack clusters, we may one day determine that certain pressures have lured a greater number of sharks to a given vicinity, and, on the rarest of occasions, one or more bad actors have joined the influx of sharks. Simply because a shark, of even a dangerous species, is present in near-shore waters, does not guarantee an attack, nor does it even make it likely. In regard to luring sharks inshore, one may note that the Sharm el-Sheikh attack investigation cited animal carcass disposal as a lure. This exact assertion was made by a U.S. congressman in the 1916 occurrence. I was only recently made aware of another potential shark lure at the Matawan Creek, Keyport Bay vicinity, contemporary to the attacks. Matawan Creek was a known location where farm produce was transported to New York by barge. In coming toward the creek, different barges came from New York City slaughterhouses. The slaughterhouses supplied manure to enrich the fields of bayshore summer farms. The manure would travel on dung boats, which I presume could shed cargo dust that would stimulate the diverse members of the aquatic food chain. Hearing about shark attacks should not promote a phobia for the sea, nor any unreasonable sensitization to the subject. On the contrary, it should heighten our observation, appreciation, and understanding of the dynamic natural surroundings we are privileged to enter. As we know, unprovoked shark-related injuries are anomalies, and the 1916 attacks are anomalies within an anomaly. Advancements in technology and field data will certainly tell us more about such atypical events in the future, but for now, the October 1916 summary commentary by Dr. John Nichols, the primary investigator of the New Jersey attacks, remains appropriate. Nichols stated that, "It must be admitted that deaths from shark bite within a short radius of New York City would seem to be one of those unaccountable happenings that take place from time to time, to the confounding of savants and justification of the wildest tradition." A century has passed, yet that erudite observation is still difficult to dispute. Richard G. Fernicola, M.D., May 2016. Introduction. In the essential order of prey-predator food chain, there exists a delegation of creatures perched at the highest level with few natural enemies. The polar bear and the Nile crocodile are some notable apex predators that not only rule their respective alimentary niches, but also have been responsible for more than one human death. Biologists and animal behavior specialists do debate the assertion that these creatures are actually seeking out man as prey, but no one will dispute the very real danger that these animals can present to a person caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Of all the predators implicated in man-eating events, none conjures up more intense dread than the shark. It is certainly terrifying to be confronted by a bear deep in the woods or a tiger in a remote village in India, but it is, perhaps, of some small comfort to know that a single shot from a rifle can thwart the danger from such a visible terrestrial predator. It is quite another issue, however, to imagine being a shipwrecked sailor, a surfer, or a beach bather about to be attacked, dismembered, and consumed by a dark, black-eyed monster with razor-sharp teeth, vice-like jaws, and sandpaper-like skin. What is so terribly disconcerting about this scenario is that the ocean is an environment that hinders both our ability to see the approaching danger and complicates our most natural and effective means of escape. The shark, on the other hand, is the master predator of its domain. Conditions that are only marginal for human comfort and survival are the same conditions that allow this powerful creature to spring suddenly and mercilessly upon us. In 1975, the release of the major motion picture Jaws touched off an international shark attack panic. Peter Benchley, author of the novel, said in an interview commemorating the 25th anniversary of this classic work, "Completely, inadvertently, it tapped into a very, very deep fear." The Benchley story depicts a fearsome beast of the deep that strikes first at an unsuspecting nighttime skinny dipper. Next, with an explosion of airborne blood, the Jaws monster devours a pathetically innocent boy riding on a raft, and even ventures into uncharted territory to dismember a swimmer recreating in a narrow inlet. As the novel and the film progress, a rampant shark hunt does little to quell the snowballing fear of a sea-going phantom. It's impossible to forget the image of the black-veiled mother mourning the death of her son, or the frantic shark hunters who scramble to safety as their dock refuge is pulverized by the 20-foot white shark. In the end, hopes and tension ride on the skills of the crusty Captain Quint, Robert Shaw, and his two-man crew, Amity Police Chief Martin Brody, Roy Scheider, and dedicated ichthyologist Hooper, Richard Dreyfuss. The audience's fear of sharks, however, did not end with the roll of screen credits, and to some extent they live on, 4 decades later, in the minds of those of us who spend time among the breaking waves. The exact origins of this seemingly inherent fear are unknown. What is known, however, is that the mechanical shark attacking the makeshift Hollywood set is neither the first nor nearly the most terrifying instance of shark attack the world has ever seen. What is also known is the fact that world-famous shark hunter Frank Mundus had predecessors working his dangerous occupation during the early part of the 20th century. In reality, many or most of the elements that gave Jaws its punch have a correlate in a real-life horror that unfolded 100 years ago. Indeed, man's widespread baptism to sharks and attacks took place nearly 60 years before Jaws was written, at the beginning of July 1916, when 5 people were attacked off the New Jersey shore in the course of 12 days. These bizarre attacks were more than enough to send a prosperous East Coast society and the world at large into a climate of shock and confusion over what could now be classified as a once-in-a-millennium event. These events, however, did not take place in a vacuum. They took place during the waning months of an innocent and grand age. War was raging in Europe and tempting U.S. involvement. A polio epidemic was ravaging New York and threatening New Jersey. A German U-boat appeared in American ports. Foreign sabotage missions were taunting the Northeast, and Pancho Villa was terrorizing U.S. troops in Mexico. During what was expected to be the last golden summer of the pre-war era, President Wilson and several of his cabinet members looked to the placid Jersey shore for a spectacular respite prior to the presidential elections in November. As America moved into the 20th century, it held an image of itself as glorious, confident, and powerful. It was the victory in the Spanish-American War of 1898 that created, for the first time, the reality of the United States as a world power. William McKinley was the country's leader, but Teddy Roosevelt stood as our ideal, an honest, mighty, and progressive giant. By 1914, the nation looked to New Jersey governor and academic scholar Woodrow Wilson to guide it with the safe hand of presidential diplomacy during the early uncertain months of World War I in Europe. Peace without victory, war, was Wilson's optimistic motto. Years earlier, Wilson was elected governor of New Jersey on the laurels of his performance as school president of Princeton University. During the second year of Wilson's presidency, however, his intellectual cool was put to the test by several unprecedented assaults. No fewer than 128 Americans were caught in the deadly and dastardly crossfire in the German torpedo strike on the British line.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?